So I'm here with Mike Heatwole of the Pebble Partnership in Alaska. Thank you for joining me and stepping up to the line here at Mining and Energy Expo. Better in Our Backyard is sponsoring this. They've asked us to be here today and have some of these conversations. And so greatly appreciate you taking the time and investing in this conversation with us.
Thanks for the invitation. And that's a fun part about this is Better in Our Backyard, I think, is just such a great theme for an organization to begin with.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
I think in their name, it encompasses everything that they're about and what the American people and the world need to understand about mining here in the United States.
Yeah.
I mean,
we have a choice in our society, where these minerals are going to come from, and we'll get into this, a little bit more. But in the United States, we have a higher environmental ethos, and people get that intuitively. But then we also have a higher standard for worker protections, right? So the guys that are coming to our mine sites or our other industrial sites, we're taking care of them. There's a reason we have an OSHA and things like that don't exist. Several years ago, it came across my feed to look at what Apple was experiencing. They call it the iPhone's cobalt problem.
Yeah.
And so you Google that and you see the kids that are going, deep into these tunnels to get the cobalt that's ending up in your kids, right? So we don't allow that in the United States. And so when you say better in our backyard, better environmentally, better because we're not having kids doing the work, and better protections for our workers, among many, many other things.
Wow. So, Mike, you've been involved with Pebble since 2008.
Long time, yeah.
I think a lot of people don't realize. I was just having a conversation with Kathy from Twin Metals just a few minutes ago, and she was talking about the time investment and how miners in the industry are legacy thinkers.
Yeah.
Because you have to be.
You have to be.
Do you need me to have them adjust that for you?
Just going to move it up a tad. I feel like I'm leaning over. I think
it's all right. Can you adjust that for him? So if you're listening here, we're having technical difficulties, and because we're a real and authentic podcast,
a newbie error.
You get to hear it. This is Mike's very first debut into the podcast world.
Yes.
I'm impressed.
There we go. That's good. Thanks.
That's good? All right.
Yeah, so you're talking about the longevity. We have a sister project in Alaska called the Donlin Gold Project, and they're similar to us. They've been at it now for 25, 30 years, and a lot of these larger projects just take probably too much time.
Yeah.
But there's the whole exploration end of the phase, and you got to figure out, do you have enough material there that justifies getting into permitting? Then you get into permitting, and that can take a long time. And then in many cases, you're then involved in litigation. And so to get from discovery to the first pouring of the metal that you're after on some of these larger projects can be a very, very long time. And it takes a level of commitment. The person said it very well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that legacy thinking, I think, is something that one, you have to think outside of yourself. You have to think, because you're probably not going to experience the benefits from it that you would hope to. And it's really about others in a way. And I don't mean to make it overly noble, but the reality is a lot of what Better in Our Backyard is doing, what you're trying to do with Pebble, what they're trying to do with Twin Metals, what they're trying to do, it's about caring for our communities, caring for our environment. Like, I think one of the things that is shocking to me is how intense it is, and I don't understand. So, there's the environment aspect, there's the child labor aspect, and you are far more educated than me on all the other things, but it's why we are not doing more of a push to be doing this stuff where we have those regulatory things, where we have those things in place to protect children, to protect the environment. We need to be focusing more on that.
Well, I think there's so many paths you can take on this particular piece, but it really strikes me. You're familiar with some of the conversation now about the so-called abundance agenda, right? Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson have a book out, and their whole premise is that to fix big issues in our country, we have to get more sanity in the regulatory environment. Yeah. And for those of us who have been in the resource community for a long time, it's finally others are seeing the challenges and the impediments to getting stuff done. So when you say better in our backyard makes complete sense and we get it, the hurdles we have in front of us many times are self-inflicted because of the exploitation of our permitting process by people who just want to stop.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to figure out how do we collectively get to a decision that moves this forward to the benefit of all of us.
Yeah. Well, so I have a question for you, and I don't know if I want to ask it because it honestly scares me a little bit. And since we don't edit anything, it's like, maybe I don't want to know the answer. Are we too late?
No, because...
Tell me why.
It's a great question. I'm a big fan of the founding of this country.
Come on.
I spend a lot of time reading, America being this idea that how we got here, tremendous. A lot of works and challenges along the way that, I think are important for all of us to know. But it's that hope and faith that I have in our founding and our journey here that tells me, yes, we can move forward, provided that we all have a collective understanding that where we're trying to go.
Yeah.
That might sound a little Pollyannish, but I'm an optimist at heart, and I try to believe that where we're going is the right place.
Yeah.
So there are big problems in our country, depending upon how far we want to go down different paths here. We have monster problems in our country that need to be fixed, but I think if you and I sat down and looked at 10 of them, we'd be surprised at how much we actually have in common on trying to resolve them. And it's not that different within the resource space. There are people who will say, no, under any circumstances do we want to have any kind of development. And I always like to challenge that a little bit and say, okay, well, if you're no under any circumstances, that means you're going to take the pledge to not have the next iPhone that comes out, or your laptop computer, your chromoly bike. You pick your thing. It came from a hole in the ground somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. And do you want to have it done here in the United States, where we have absolutely the best? If we just started talking about it, the environmental and worker safety protections in the world. Or do you want to turn a blind eye? And I actually think some of them want to turn a blind eye and have these materials coming in from jurisdictions that don't share our values.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's something that we as a country, as a people, we need to open our eyes to it, and we need to step up to the line, and we need to be like, you know what? No, I'm. We call this podcast The Line for a reason, because we believe there is a line, and I think that when we draw lines around things, we bring clarity and we bring intention to a project or to a situation. Mm-hmm. And we have to do that in order to be effective. And the reality is, let's not ignore these things. Let's make it, because when we do that, then the other thing, and to your point, I'm an optimist as well. And I love the American experiment. Yeah. I love what our founding fathers did, because people would have said it's impossible then to be where we are now. Yeah. And I think that's an important thing to remember. The reality is, you can't always look at these things and be like, oh, well, that's not possible. I might as well not even try, because it's just not true. And history bears that out. And that's why history is so important. Yeah. And it's like, as a country, as a people, when we do those things and we hold the line and we bring things up to it and we're like, you know what? No, this is not okay. The reality is that affects the rest of the world. We become leaders, and we can lead an industry in how to do things in a way that affect us for the next 500 years. Yeah. And I think that's something that is really important. And I love, it's funny, I'm an industrial electrician by trade. And you talk about copper. One of my first podcasts I did in a copper mine in Arizona that was opening, and I had all my life I handle copper, I work with copper, electrical work. We can't do our job without copper wire. It doesn't exist. Yep. And the reality is, I had no idea where my copper wire was coming from. Yep. I had no idea, and then I had no idea what the effects of that were. I lived through 2008 in business, where copper wire was up here, and then it went down here. And it's like, that's one of those things. I'll never forget the day that a supplier said to me, hey, that quote is good till 5 p.m. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
But that's the reality. And what you're talking about is not only enforcing and bringing into some things that communicate our values to the world. And listen, if there are values, then we need to live by them.
Yep.
You know, in our organization, we hire and fire based on our values.
Yep.
And so we should expect the same thing of us as a country. It's like, well, listen, if these are our values, then that costs more. That's okay with me. You know what I mean?
Fair point. Yep.
That's what it needs to be. And because otherwise you're looking very short term, especially, you know, we're not living on Mars yet. So we have one planet.
Correct.
And we need to lead in that.
And you touched on something I think is really important. Encourage people to do a deep dive on their reliance on copper. I get to speak to a lot of high school classes in my job, and that's one of the things I point out is that, you know, without copper the lights don't come on, but you know, it's got antimicrobial properties. If we want to have, you probably heard this from others already, if you want to have renewable energy, we have to mine a lot more copper. I heard a statistic the other day that the manager of the Escondida mine in South America said to meet the world demand as we know it, and this is a couple years ago, this is the largest copper mine in the world, we need 14 of these to come online to meet it. I got another one that I'm going to share in my presentation tomorrow from the World Bank. It says, you know, as a society, we need to mine in the next 25 years the amount of copper that we've mined in the previous 5,000 years.
5,000.
Yeah, we've been mining copper for 5,000 years. It's something like 550 million tons of copper, 85% of which is still in circulation because it's highly recyclable. But in order, this is just to meet the demand of renewable energies. And the study, or the graphic I have, was before you bring in the impacts of Bitcoin and AI, which is, you know, are going to drive the energy capacity.
Insanely, yes.
You know, electric cars and all the substations just take a tremendous volume of material. And I don't think most people have a grasp on it. And, you know, to bring us back to where we are, we need more organizations like this that are constantly talking, especially to our kids, about, you know, where are all of the materials coming from? The Alaska miners have a great bumper sticker that says, if it can't be grown, it has to be mined, or, you know, some variation of that. And it's so true, right? If you grow it, wood to, you know, build your buildings, or it has to come from a mine of some kind, sand and gravel, you know. That's the truth. All of it. I mean, all of it, like this phone, this cup. Yep. I mean, the table, everything. Yeah. There's another funny one. A guy in England, it's called the Toaster Project. You can see it on YouTube. And he decided he wanted to try to make his own toaster. And he had to find all of the component parts and went out, you know, and he had to forge this and, you know, and it took him forever. And it was just a bit of a study on where it all comes from, but also you know, just where we've come in our ability to manufacture stuff and all the incredible works of our industrial society. That's crazy. Mike, I gave you a heads up before we got started. And I love what you're talking about. Clearly you're passionate about it. Clearly you've been doing it for a while. Yep. But that makes you an expert in it, and it's very easy for you to share things that we need to know. And I think that's something that, I mean, that's why we're sitting here having this conversation. Better in Our Backyard is investing in this conversation for the American people, for the mining industry. I mean, as much as I would love to travel around the country for free, I don't. And they believe in what this is and what we're doing. Yeah. And so I love what it is that you're talking about. I love the things and the way that you're articulating it and communicating it. It shows your experience, and I think that's important. Thank you. So what is a tool or a piece of gear that you cannot live without? So that's a great question. Don't say copper. No. You'll laugh. So I'm a runner and love to run year-round. My headlamp. Really? So I'm going to use that because for me, where I get recharged, so I run in the middle of winter, you know, 0 degrees, go outside. Yeah, you're from Alaska. I'm from Alaska. You know, dead of winter, it's dark. Yeah. The Fat Tire bikers set all kinds of trails for us out there, and take my dogs and put the headlamp on, and it lights up the path that I get to go out and run in the crisp, cold air.
Come on.
And you see the light refracting off of the snow and the ice crystals in the air, and it's magical. So I would be hard-pressed to be able to do that without my headlamp. And other gear that fits into all of that is really around running, which is my other passion. I could also make a plug for Yeti mugs, because I like my beer to be cold and my coffee hot, but we'll leave it at that.
I love it. Well, I think that you touch on something there with your one thing that is really important is recharging.
Yep.
I think that we can get caught up, especially in the trade world, in the blue collar world. We don't realize how important it is to rest. I've learned this since being in more of the creative space. A lot of some of our team's greatest creativity comes after they've had a time to recharge.
Yeah.
And I think we're all creative. I don't think that the only creatives are the ones behind a camera. I think that we have been created in that way, and we all have the ability and the desire and the purpose to be creative. And so the only way that I know to do that effectively is to recharge. If you keep going and going and going and you don't recharge like that, the reality is you're going to burn out. I mean, you have a headlamp. I assume it takes a battery.
It does. And I have to recharge it after 2 uses.
Exactly.
It has to recharge as well. And even for all of the running that I do to recharge, I also have to take rest days myself, because it's, have to let my body recharge in a different way.
Yeah, I think that's something for me as I've gotten older. I wish that I would have learned that when I was younger. Because I used to be like, well, I'm just going to push through. My wife has been huge in letting me know that I need to chill out and recharge. So she's pretty good about that. So tell me about Pebble.
Sure.
Like a lot of people you say know you from the Pebble partnership, the Pebble project. Tell us what that is and what you're doing there.
You bet. So to begin, it was discovered in 1987 by some geologists with Cominco, Alaska, now Teck. They were looking primarily for gold in a place in Alaska, in southwest Alaska, about 200 miles southwest of Anchorage, Alaska, and about 15 miles north of Iliamna Lake, which is one of our largest lakes in the state. And in the early 2000s, those leases were acquired by a company called Northern Dynasty, and they were looking for more than gold. They said that we think that there's more here based on
Sounds like a great tagline. They were looking for more than gold.
Right? Yeah, no, exactly. And they determined that there was quite a bit of copper, undertook a very extensive environmental study and exploration and engineering program, attracted the interest of a major mining company called Anglo American in 2007, and that's when I kind of come on board. So Pebble is what we call a polymetallic mine: copper, gold, silver, rhenium, and molybdenum. The rhenium and molybdenum come together. I got to keep that straight in my head. All in very significant quantities. Pebble in the copper, which by volume and value is really what the play is the largest undeveloped copper prospect in North America, if not the world. So a very significant contributor if we could bring it online to meet our needs for copper. Now we're also situated in a part of our state that is near Bristol Bay, which is where a lot of our salmon come from.
Yeah.
And our whole pitch has been that the project has to coexist with the fishery, because we recognize...
Can it do that?
We can. I'll get to that in a second, but it has to exist culturally and commercially. Our nearby communities are dependent upon salmon to fill their freezers. I mean, every Alaskan has a salmon story. That's kind of part of it in our DNA. And so I mentioned that Northern Dynasty had undertaken these environmental studies. So they've invested in the environmental studies program alone $200 million. Wow. I'll say that again. Environmental studies, $200 million over the course of probably 10 or 12 years, extensively focused on fish and water and knowing all things that they can about it, so that we could meet the values criteria that we set for ourselves about coexisting. And it's not a fish or mining, it's fish and mining. And where we're located within the ecosystem, we took a project into permitting that said it was not going to cause environmental impacts outside of the boundaries of where we're doing our operations. If you dig a hole in the ground, you're going to have local impacts.
Yeah.
The environmental impact statement that was published by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in July of 2020 is full of top-line statements that the project will not cause any harm to that fishery, and equal statements about the water resources. And that's kind of a fast track of discovery through getting a positive EIS. But we've had some challenges with the Environmental Protection Agency in that window for political reasons that have tried to stop us from being able to, in one case, get into the permitting process and then blocking us while we were in it.
Wow. I feel like you're in like a battle.
Yeah.
I mean, so what is it with this process? Why is this so? I mean, I know the answer to this. Well, I don't know if I know the answer. I think I understand it. But it's like, why is this so important to the American people? Why does it matter so much that we get this through and get it off the ground?
Yeah, many reasons. There's jobs and economic activity for not only my state, but any major Alaska project. You look at the development of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, that had economic tentacles across the United States.
For sure.
And so all of the supplies that come into a mining operation have to come from somewhere. The trucks have to come from Caterpillar or one of the other major manufacturers. Everything comes from somewhere else. And so there's the economic activity for Alaska and the nation. There's the direct jobs, locally about 800, probably 2,000 in total. For the state of Alaska, there's the taxation for the local jurisdiction that we are, local revenues. We've estimated for the communities that are nearest us, they'll see a five-fold increase in their tax base.
Five-fold?
Five-fold. $5 billion right now, $25 million should we go into operation. That's a game changer. For in our part of Alaska, the communities, there's not a lot of economy, and so the population is in slow decline. So there's the jobs, year-round jobs are really not that prevalent. And so if you're raising a family in a community like Iliamna, where we're based, you're gonna move to Anchorage to get a job, or you're gonna work on Alaska's North Slope and be away from your family. And I think many would prefer to be in their home
100%.
community. And on the school front, Alaska's got a unique funding formula for how we fund our schools, in that in our rural districts, they have a 10-student minimum for your K through 12 school in order to keep the doors open. You go below that, you lose your school. That's the hurt of many of these communities. And many of the communities in the region where we are, I think since I've been there, I've seen 6 or 7 now schools that have had to close, and many others are on the bubble.
I know a little bit about communities. I come from the state of Pennsylvania, and we were huge in coal. And there are many coal towns that you talk about being in decline. And it's one of those things, when your community is in decline, a lot of times there's no way to save it. There's no way to change it. The reality is, for you in Alaska right now, you have solutions to change that.
Correct.
And that's huge. And it's not something that we should ignore as Americans, as Alaskans, as Minnesotans. Like, these are not things that we should be ignoring, especially when it's right there.
Jobs, people throw around the term jobs a lot without really, I think, fully appreciating what does a job mean to somebody.
Yeah.
So I got 2 stories I want to share. One,
come on.
The EPA administrator...
for your first podcast, you're doing great.
Oh, thank you. Gina McCarthy came to Iliamna, and one of our employees, I'm not going to name her, but she's waited in the back of the room, really not comfortable speaking publicly. But at the end, she said, "I really have something I want to say. Without Pebble, I'd be on welfare.
Wow.
And I want to work because it gives me pride."
Come on. Come on.
You listen to a story like that and you say, let's get her a job, right?
Absolutely. Another
one, I'm going to also not use the name or the location, but there was a kid on one of our drilling rigs. I'd bring stakeholders out, we'd fly the helicopters in. He wanted nothing to do with what I was doing.
Yeah.
Right, so he'd go and hide in the smoke shack and wait for us to depart. But we got him into a driller kind of apprentice program, working with our Department of Labor.
Come on, I love this.
This is great. He becomes a certified driller, and on his rig, he has his brothers as his helpers, right, on the rig. And now when we fly in, shuts the rig down, comes over, says, "Hey, Mike, come on over. I want to show you what we're doing." Shakes all of our hands and what we want to do. And you realize just the transformation of what this meant.
Yeah.
And that's a job. And when we had to downscale our exploration program, the ebbs and flows of markets and investment and all of that, he was able to get picked up by other companies in the state because he had a skill that he could take somewhere else and provide for his family. And many of the folks who were working for us in our heyday, they're supporting 2 or 3 families on just limited income from our exploration work. And so when I hear people throwing around, jobs, I want you to pause and really understand what does meaningful work mean to a person and their family.
I love that meaningful work because I think that's what the skilled trades are about.
Absolutely.
I love hearing about him and him learning that skill because one of the things that my father said to me when I was growing up, and he said, learn a trade because no one can ever take that away from you. And so it's like, you might have downsized, but he can take that trade anywhere.
Yeah.
That's something that you've given him that he has for the rest of his life.
Correct.
And even to the young lady that you talk about, and she's like, I want to work, it gives me pride. Yep. I actually think that's something that we are wired for. We need to do that. And when we do that, it does something in us that it's like, it's good to be proud of what you do. It's good to be making a difference.
Yeah.
And for the men and women that Pebble is affecting in that way, not to mention, you're only affecting them like this much right now.
Correct, yeah. And we're just an exploration project right now.
Exactly.
We're what's called advanced exploration. So that just means we're in permitting.
Yeah. Well, and I know I sound like a broken record with this, but the permitting process is insane. Mike has been doing this since 2008. That's almost 20 years.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And you're not active yet.
Not active yet. Now, in fact, right now we are in the throes of litigation with the Environmental Protection Agency because of the political whims of the Obama-era EPA and the Biden-era EPA. We got a window in 2016 until 2020 to get our project into permitting and through the permitting process.
Yeah.
Only to have the project, in my words, arbitrarily vetoed on a use of the Clean Water Act that we don't believe it was intended to do.
It's very frustrating, especially when I don't think the American people realize how that affects those families and those people in those communities. Right. And clearly, you guys live there, so you care about doing it right. It's your backyard.
Yep. No, Alaska is it's a truly special place. We moved up when I was a kid in the 1970s. I left to go to university when I was 18, thinking I would never come back, and that worked for about 5 years out of college, and just felt the call to come home. And I love the ability to get out. As I mentioned, I'm a runner.
Yeah.
The foothills behind Anchorage. Alaskans enjoy the environment around them, and we want to demonstrate that we can have both. We can have economic activity and an environment that we get recharged in. We go fishing and hunting, and using your ATVs and everything in between.
Wow.
If you want to get outside and get active, it's the greatest state in the union to do it. But I know I'm in Minnesota, so I'm not going to go too far down there.
Well, we don't typically do our podcasts here in a hotel. We typically do them on site, on the job sites. I've never done a podcast in Alaska. Just inviting myself to your backyard.
You come up to our backyard, we'll have a conversation.
What happens if Pebble is still where it is today, 5-10 years down the road? What does that mean for the American people, for Alaskans?
Well, there's a couple of things at play here. One, the minerals are there. Once you discover something, it's kind of hard to put the genie back in the bottle. So it's kind of a question of, unless you permanently change the land classification, at some point there's a potential for a mine there. But the nation needs the copper. We need the other minerals that are there as part of
we need
what
that now.
Correct. And the other part of it is, are we going to process these minerals domestically?
Yeah.
And that's another conversation that here in the industry we need to put a lot more teeth behind, whether it's working with the federal government to get some type of research money to say, there are other processes out there for how we turn the minerals into metal.
Yeah.
Or working with universities and partnering up. There's a lot of brilliant minds out there, and there's no reason that we shouldn't be having significantly more domestic mineral processing. We're looking at something called hydrometallurgy, which is kind of a leaching type approach to try to get the copper, but it's in its infancy stages, but it also adds to the value chain, right? More jobs and more opportunity if you do it in your own backyard.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that's something that, we talked about values. We really have to do that if we want to lead the world in our values. And I think that our values as a country, as organizations, I think they matter because I think that affects positively affecting other people to be like, oh, maybe this is a better way.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a way. Maybe I don't need to send children into the mine to pull this stuff out. Maybe I should.
Well, the thing I think that happens too is sometimes people's understanding of mining is rooted in, I'll call it the pre-NEPA world, right? Before all the alphabet soup of environmental laws that we passed, not NEPA, Clean Water Act, Clean Air, Endangered Species, Marine Mammal Protection, you name it, from the late 60s to mid 70s, we've said we're going to change how we approach industry in the United States. And all the companies have taken that to heart. We've improved our environment, and prospects are still there, and they can be done right.
Yeah. So, Mike, I talked with you about how we want to be real and authentic. I'm talking with a guy who's involved in a project where you want to bring copper, gold. You mentioned other minerals and elements that I can't even think of, but it's like we want to bring value through this conversation. So I want to ask you a question here that I ask everybody. I gave you some time for it. I told you I wasn't going to let you off the hook with it. What is a mistake that you've made in your life and your career that you'd be willing to share with our listeners that they might be able to learn from, that they might not have to experience that?
Yeah, it's actually a tough question to try to think of off the cuff, even though you gave me a little bit of time to work on it. But I'm going to amplify a skill that I think that we could all be better at, and it's listening. Maybe it's to say to be a better listener earlier in my career rather than thinking I have all the answers.
Yeah,
I think that's probably where I would start the conversation, because I think when I'm younger, I go into the room thinking I know it all.
I wish that wasn't true about me too.
Right now, and I want to go back and say, actually, you don't. And we learn more as we mature, and so maybe that's what I will use, is be a better, more active listener, and taking that more to heart. I mean, I'm a very studious person, but I think we could all benefit by using the ears we were given for the purpose we were given them for.
Do you have any? Are there any stories that you can think of where you didn't listen, and it would have benefited you that you'd be willing to share? And if not, I mean, I have like 1,000 of them.
Yeah.
But
sometimes even as an early manager of people, I know there were times when I could have done a better job as a manager. And it's hard managing people because you want to be liked, and sometimes you have to have hard conversations. But being a better listener overall as a manager, as a practitioner,
I think that's something for me.
I don't have something tangible that comes to mind, but I look back over the span of my career.
I can understand what you're saying, because for me, in managing people specifically, I did not realize the value of listening early on, and the value even for myself, and the value for those who I was leading. And I think I used to think that, well, we got to get it done, we got to make it happen, and I don't want to miss that opportunity, I don't want to miss that time, so let's keep it moving. And it's like I would almost feel like if I would take the time to listen, I might miss it. but it was exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
So.
Actually, just in talking, more come to mind as a manager. Delegating more and learning how to delegate. Early on as a manager, I thought that I had to lead by example, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to work the longest hours, I'll just need to follow what I'm doing here instead of pausing and using the opportunity to teach and listen more. So, yeah.
I think that's really huge, and I think that it's one of those things. I'm a big proponent of the power of team. I mean, we're here doing this conversation right now, and there's a couple of guys behind the lens right now that are making this look good, making it sound good. I couldn't do this without them.
Yeah.
And I have realized as a leader, it's like, well, I want to surround myself with people that we can become an unstoppable team.
Yeah.
And when you collaborate like that and you work like that, and in listening to team, that is essential in being effective.
Yeah.
When you do that, that's when you can really make a difference. So, well, Mike, I appreciate what you're doing, with the Pebble Project. I appreciate just hearing about your views on what these things look like. Where can people find you to learn more information? Where can they find your organization? Where do they look that up?
You bet. Primarily pebblepartnership.com. That's our corporate website. I'm on LinkedIn. Our colleague Ryan here with Better in Our Backyard is the one who made me realize there's a lot more happening on LinkedIn these days than
I agree.
10 years ago. Very surprising how much more activity there is there. So hit me up there too.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for stepping up to the line.
Thanks for the invitation.
Appreciate it.